Hi everyone. In this quick video, we'll be going through the CNS-TAP Web Application and we'll be discussing all its features and how best to navigate the app to get the most out of it. Now, before we begin, if you're someone who is brand new to the tool, make sure to read our introduction paragraph that provides some background around what the tool is and how it works. And you can also take a look at the linked paper, which goes into much greater depth. If you're someone who is familiar with the CNS-TAP tool and its ranking and its algorithm, but you're new to our app, feel free to take a look at our user manual, which provides some more context into how the app works and some of the design features. And finally, if you're looking at this video from a phone, make sure when you're using the app to use your phone in landscape mode. Okay, and so the first step is to click the begin button, and like I said before, if you're someone who this might be your first time using the app, we have a built-in introduction tutorial that'll walk you through every single step and feature of the app. So if this applies to you, click the OK button. But as you're watching this video here, I will be walking you through the app anyway, so we can say no to that. Okay, and so now that you've entered the app, this is the main landing page. This is the user view page. And so over on the left, you'll see a select your pathways panel. And this is where you'll see all the genomic alterations a given patient might have. And so the first step you'll want to do is to select the relevant pathways of interest. And so for example, if you're looking for checkpoint inhibitors, you would select PD-1, genetic cytotoxics, and maybe PDGFR. The filter right above right here is for only including FDA-approved drugs, and so if you toggle this switch, it will remove any drugs that are not FDA-approved from this list. Now moving over to the main view, this is the drug table, and so you'll have all your agents subgrouped within whichever pathway that they are in, based on the ones that you selected over on the left. And then you'll have the list of the several different filters that CNS-TAP scores these agents on. And then over on the right, you'll have your total. Now moving up over into the features at the top, this one is called scoring criteria. And this is where we sort of break down in depth, based on how the tool works, each category that's scored and ranked for each agent and how the point system is awarded and their respective weights. And so if you want to learn more on how the tool works and sort of how the weighting works for the different agents for each filter, feel free to look at this. Now that we've selected a few pathways of interest and we've toggled our FDA approved, if we have a specific patient in mind or if we have a sequencing report at hand, we can toggle on the patient data columns. And just to remind everyone, this isn't optional. You can still use the app if you don't have a specific patient sequencing data. But if you do, you can enter in some patient-specific values, which will help provide a patient-specific CNS-TAP score as well. And so the first patient-specific column that you can add in is clonality. And so if the given agent, for example with PDGFR, if the given mutation is clonal, then you would check dominant. If it's a fusion, then you would choose fusion. Or if it's subclonal or there's no data or it's less dominant, you would click 0. And that'll fill in all the gray boxes filled in. The next column is the tiering. And so if your specific alteration in this specific patient is tier 4, you would select 0. Tier 3, you would select 1. Tier 1 or 2, you would select 2. And if you want some further explanation of what these different tiers are and which mutations would fall into each given tier, make sure to go back to our scoring criteria. And if you scroll down, you can see that a tier 1 or 2 alteration are variants of potential or very strong clinical significance, and on and on. The final patient-specific input column is the trial column. And so if you have a patient and there's a specific agent that there's an ongoing clinical trial for which this patient is eligible for and has the capacity to travel to, you would select yes for that specific agent, and you would go through the list for all the different agents currently being scored. So once you enter in your patient-specific values, remember, once again, this is a reminder that this is optional, but it will be helpful to generate patient-specific values if you have the sequencing report at hand. Over here on the right, you'll have your total score. And so this total score reflects the patient-specific values, and this subtotal score over here will represent just the intrinsic values based on the 6 different criteria that CNS-TAP scores these drugs on. The next step is, if you would like a visualization of this data, you can toggle on up here the pathway graphs option, and if you scroll down, you will see a visualization of the data. On the left is just the y-axis is just the score of the CNS-TAP, and for each respective agent, and it's also subgrouped by individual pathways, which we selected in this specific, for this tutorial, we selected 3 different pathways. You'll also notice that each pathway is color-coded, and so you can keep track of which dots are associated with which pathway. And then the last thing you can see from this graph is we have some dots that are filled in and some that are hollow on the inside. And so if you remember, we have a subtotal, which is just the intrinsic value scores, and then we have a total, which is the patient-specific scoring. And so the hollow ones are the patient-specific scores for the specific patient, and then the filled-in bubbles are the ones that are the intrinsic, the baseline values. Okay, and then the last thing that you can do is open up this note space here. And so if you have any specific comments or recommendations that you would want to include that will be included in the generated report, the CNS-TAP report, this is where you'd put them in. So if there are specific agents that CNS-TAP scores very similarly, for example, some of these cytotoxics, and you have a specific preference for one of them, you can include that here. For example, if immune checkpoint inhibitors, if you have a preference for Pembro or Nivo for this specific patient, you would include that here as well. Or any other specific comments that you would like to make that would be included in the CNS-TAP report that gets generated. For our purposes, I'll just say this is a demo. Great. And then the last feature, which will determine just based on the age. If the patient is an adult, you would toggle this on, and that'll remove this pediatric safety column, which focuses on just how much data is available, pediatric phase 1 safety data. And so that you can toggle based on the given patient that you have at hand. And then finally, you can click Generate Report. And at any time in this app, if you need a refresher or you're lost, make sure you can always click the question mark on the top right, and it'll invite you to take a look at the introduction again, which will go through step by step how the app works and every single features. If you're ever curious, once again, about any of the filters that we talked about or that the CNS-TAP scores, you can click Scoring Criteria and you can see these broken down. Great. So then once you are ready and you add in your specific notes for this specific patient and you have your graph, you can click Generate Report, and then the app will make a custom report based on this data that you inputted. And so on the second slide of the report, you will have your table with all the different agents sorted by their specific pathways and all the different filters that CNS-TAP scores them on. And over on the right, you'll see your total points. If you scroll down, you will also see your graph visualization pasted into this report. And then at the bottom, you will see your specific editorial comment or recommendation that you may have typed at the bottom. And so this will be in the form of a PDF, which you can then use to insert into a PowerPoint presentation for a tumor board or print it out, whatever you wish. And so that pretty much concludes this video. And so this was a tutorial of just CNS-TAP Web Application, all its features, and how best to navigate and get the most out of the app. Thank you for listening.